Hi. So I'm back. So my first little introduction video was a bit jarring, but I think I'm going to get the hang of it. So I've decided the next video is going to be around African spirituality, but for a white person, to a white person. So I'll be speaking your language and trying to share with you what I've learned. Not saying that I know everything and that I am the expert on anything, but the way that I've uncovered it for myself, I'd like to share that with people. So how, when I went on a spiritual journey, you start with the usuals. So you go to Hinduism, Buddha, two separate things. Native American law, South American plant ceremonies, all these sorts of things, everywhere, but referencing any sort of literature from Africa. When I have gone on my spiritual journey, I have looked at things like the Bible and other religions, more the Christianity Bible, because it's more what I'm familiar with, but I've tried to expand and understand other religions like Kabbalah, and quite a few other things. Not again saying I'm an expert and I've done all this deep research, it's more what I've been, let's say, I've resonated with. And deep understanding and going deep into the literature wasn't something that I resonated with. It was more understanding the concepts and how they were actually all pulled together. Because if you start looking at a lot of law, as in folklore, you will pick up a lot of common stories. Even if I go in again, leaning on my strengths, understanding more Greek mythology, Rome mythology, that sort of lineage. Even the parallels to that, Nordic, the Norse mythology, all of that all seems to tie back into either religious sort of texts and scripts, as well as the stories told by African and all native sort of cultures. There's a common thread. You just have to try and find it if you're open-minded and open-hearted enough. Anyway, talking about African spirituality, the things that I've learned from it, and I will go into the different lessons that I've learned. But again, I want to express what I've taken away from this so you also understand where I'm coming from. One of the strongest lessons that I've taken away from African spirituality is no fear. That is a very strong sort of trend through African belief, African spirituality, African culture. So I do reference a lot of Credo Martois' work, and I've picked a lot of insights up from his readings, like how when he talks about, I'll show you a picture. So if you're ever interested in the likes of the Anunnaki, ancient civilizations, you would be familiar potentially with Credo's work. I'll show you a cover of his one book. Well, it's not actually his book, it's more the dumbed down version of his actual book, which is Die for My Children. It was just a bit much for me, so I had to go down a level. So I did the summary version. But anywho, ancient aliens, ancient civilizations. His work gets referenced in there a little bit because he talks, sadly, they actually more associated him to the alien side than the ancient civilization side. But that's one of the biases that's come through in stories that we've been told. So in Ancient Aliens, lack of a better term, his work gets used when he criticizes the understanding of what's called the white lady, because it is very intentionally made white, and it has feminine aspects to it. But how Credo actually talks about this is it's a leader of an ancient civilization, and he wasn't a great guy, quite oppressive. And one of his criticisms is his bow. He says this is not a truly African person because of the bow, because the bow is a coward's weapon, because you're not fighting with your soul, you're not fighting with your weapon to your heart. This is a coward's weapon because you can stand and hide somewhere and shoot someone. So it's an honorable type of weapon. And that's led me into some of the readings where he mentions fear and how African cultures try to address fear, even through the initiations. And I think that's why people have misinterpreted a lot of their ceremonies as a savage thing, because they'll wear masks and it'll be very abrupt and it's very fear-inducing, but it's meant to be. It's a part of the whole ceremony. You are meant to enter without fear, because if you enter with fear, the consequences are too severe. And that's something that I will talk about at a later stage, and why I think and how I think we've gotten to where we are. Another thing that I have reflected on when looking at African history, highly would recommend that. And not the African history that is commonly known. No, it's not even not commonly known. It's quite well known, but we don't talk about it a lot. Is we would have to accept as an entire world that African people are the first people. And I think the message of how that's come out is therefore that makes them the most savage and the most unrefined, you know, because they're the unrefined version of evolution. But when you look at African history, you will actually see that they had a sophisticated civilization, but it was destroyed. So if you think about just the little bits of history that you do know, and Egypt and the Library of Alexandria, imagine telling the story of the largest African library was burnt by the Roman people. And then you might start getting an idea of why and how our history has been manipulated to give a certain narrative. That African people were savage, they had no sophistication, the rituals are archaic, anybody who doesn't do formal religious rituals is pagan, is witchery, is sorcery, is satanic, is dark magic. None of this is true. And if we could take the time to work through a lot of our perceptions and our feelings, we would end our role in all of this. That's a big one. Then we'll see that actually we all come from African culture. And that's a very hard thing for me to say, not because I'm white, but because I feel ashamed that there's been a lot of, like even in my ancestry, in my lineage, have been a part of suppressing that. And I suppose that's where it comes from, but it's through my shame that I now find my purpose, which is also talking about this as a white person and not trying to be offensive in any way and just trying to give transparency. And I want to talk to other people, white people, African people, any people that are willing to listen about what is our true root, what is our true ancestry, what is our true one culture, you know, and not to try and take away from what anybody has established, but understand how what you currently hold sacred is commonly found in most cultures, in all cultures, and it will eventually come back to the African culture where we all started. And I don't think it's about now completely moving in like African spirituality, I'm going to go there. It's about just understanding its place in your life, where you can use components of it, or how some of what you already use in your own religion, your own spirituality, actually has a link back. And I think those are the types of dots I want to connect for people, if I can, if people allow it, if people resonate with this. I want to start connecting those little dots of how we backtrack our ancestry and how we honor our ancestry and how we continue in the world that we've chosen and the culture that we've chosen. How we can continue that with those lessons in mind. It's not about revamping and going back. It's about understanding, integrating, and moving forward with free will, free mind, free choice, free heart. That's what it's about. So I'm hoping that's what I'll be able to articulate in a lot of these sort of videos. Please forgive me, this is very rough for me. This is not something that I normally do. This is just something I feel compelled to do. So I will be learning on the journey. And if people have questions, if something I say doesn't make sense but it intrigues you, you want more detail, it'll give me a little bit more guidance as to where I can go with these conversations, because there's a wealth of information, either on the African history, African culture, and African spirituality. Those are all very different components, but they all pull together and they all impact us, regardless of our race, regardless of our culture, regardless of our religion, because we all have one source, we all share one mother, and we all share one heart. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons we can bring out of the African spirituality and culture. So good luck to us all. Good luck to me. I hope I can continue to do this, and then I'll have a conversation with you guys. I'm excited for this and hope you will chat soon. Cheers.